Hello, everybody. So this is gonna be a little different. We have our own podcast, like on our own channel now. As always, I'm Zachary Nolan. I'm joined by my brother Carter Nolan.
Hello.
My other co-host Jake Minchin from Peg City Hockey.
Don't use my last name.
And Jackson from Jets Hub.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest today, and I will allow our special guest to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm a fan of a trash hockey team.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for
Many
watching
people
this
watching
episode.
it.
We will see you guys in the next one. But
Yeah.
Who you pointing at?
I'm
You go. You go.
okay. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, it's a new channel, but
Good
nothing
God.
really is ever going to change with this crew. Welcome back, Matt from the Arizona Sports, AZ Sports. What's actually the official name of your channel? I always call you AZ Sports Guy. Is that just it?
Yeah,
I know you
it's
cover a
AZ Sports Guy, and everyone always says Arizona Sports Guy, and I do not know why it bothers me so much.
Well, good to know. But yeah, welcome. It's fun to bring you on because, ironically, your team is our team, and to some extent, with that twisted history, being that the Arizona Coyotes left Winnipeg, to become that team. So, how long have you been a fan for? What's been, what's kept you just watching this team out there in the desert all these years?
Oh, well, apparently I'm a masochist. I love pain and disappointment, but no, I started being a fan around 2006, late 2006. Went to my first game, I think it was against the Blue Jackets. Apparently I keep getting the dates mixed up, but I do know that Rick Nash scored a weird goal that Cujo covered it up on the goal line, and they still called it a goal. So 2007, that's the number I always throw out there, so Arizonans can't count. What's that, 16 years? Something around there. And I just like hockey. And for whatever reason, whenever I see this nice little Howling logo, I get happy, even though I should be a lot more sad because it's pretty depressing.
Well, hey, as long as you can enjoy your team, that's all that matters. But it's interesting because I haven't talked a lot. I know that probably for me, I don't know about you guys, but I've never really talked a lot with Arizona Coyotes fans. Like, I know there's a very passionate group of fans out there in the desert. I just have never really had the opportunity to talk with one and get to know more about that team. So, for us up here in Canada, we see the way the stories have progressed with that team, the narratives, the headlines, and I know personally that some of that stuff isn't true at times. So, take us through what it's like being a Coyotes fan, having to, navigate with all these, rumors and all the, the conversations and the rumors and everything that just happens with your guys' team. Because it seems like every time the Coyotes are in the news, it's something negative.
I don't even know what the best way to describe it is at this point, because it used to make me really mad, and it's just kind of like, it's frustrating, it's exhausting, like, hey, anytime anything happens, there's going to be a negative slant. But at this point in my little journey online as being a Coyotes fan, it's just gotten predictable and then kind of funny. So at this point, I just make fun of a lot of people, because you can only try to correct people in earnest for so long until you realize at some point it's people trying to spread misinformation or just trying to mess with you. So it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to point and laugh at this point because I don't know what to do.
Well, I guess I'll say
that's getting too hung up on it.
Yeah. But first game in Mullet Arena, NHL game, Jets and the Coyotes. You were at that game. We all saw your video, and a lot of other people saw your video too. Congratulations for all the success that you found after that video was posted.
If you haven't checked it out, check it out.
Absolutely, that link will be down in the description below, as well as Matt's channel, his Twitter, and every other social media. Whatever link he wants you to know about will be down there as always. Go check him out.
Yeah,
Give
so
him
you
a
can
bunch of
find
follows.
Subscribe to my OnlyFans.
There you go. We all have one, right, Carter? We all have one, right, Carter? It's all right. No need to be shamed. But
I feel like Carter
How
actually
is
has
this
one.
podcast?
it's the way she goes. It's the way she goes. That's what Ray would say. But moving on, so back to that, I want to know, what's that arena like? Because I've grown up, going to rinks that are the same size, just for I've played in rinks that big, and I've been at the WHL games and even some AHL games at rinks that size, and I know even though it's a smaller crowd, it can get rowdy in there. So, what's been your experience so far? Because if I'm also not mistaken, you have seen some ASU games there as well. So what's the atmosphere been like in the Mullet so far to start this 10-year of its new NHL team?
It makes me feel really old because before the ASU game, the entire student section, they all put their arms around each other, or like starting a wave, and it was the weirdest thing. And I'm like, I'm too old. I don't understand kids today. But it was really rowdy for ASU, even more rowdy for opening night for the Coyotes, which shocked me a little bit. And it was mostly because it was a lot. I feel like everyone was drinking that night. I was probably one of 6 people in the building that wasn't, but just a lot of trash talking, college age kids, and I should be around college age, so I don't know why I feel so old when I think about that. But no, it's an amazing atmosphere. I know the first time now that I officially had the job, I can at least talk a little bit about like my first tour through the building. It is such a beautiful arena. It is such a perfect setup, and I'm going to pretend the Coyotes don't play in it for the next 5 to 10 seconds. It's just state of the art, up to date. It's really like intimate atmosphere, but it's also kind of a monument to Arizona hockey and just how far it's grown in this market. And really, the longer I'm in it, the longer that I'm thinking about it, I really appreciate it more. But then you get an NHL team in there, and I can understand why some people are like, "Oh, hey, that's weird." But if you look at it for what it is as a college arena, it's an amazing building and a great atmosphere.
Well, that's all you can really ask for, I feel like, in any building. We know that. We have before, the Mullet became a thing with the Coyotes, the True North and the Jets, they had the smallest arena in the NHL, and even then, 15,000 is still a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that crowd is not some of the rowdiest hockey crowd I've ever been to in my life. So, it's not always about the biggest size of the arena, but the fans that you fill in it. And I think that matters a lot. And I think that a lot more fans are going to be able to see that with you guys playing at the Mullet. I know I have. Like, I've never seen an Arizona Coyotes game with that atmosphere, except maybe in the playoffs, like, well over a decade ago. So that was fun to see. Even if it's the first game, it doesn't matter. That's a good start to a new temporary solution to their problem, and I hope that it works for you guys. I genuinely do. But yeah, I'm just glad to see that it's working out there for you guys in the desert so far, because I'm just intrigued by the whole scenario of it. I know a lot of people get upset about it. I'm going to throw it around to you guys now. I'd love to know your thoughts with Jackson and Carter and them. But how do you guys feel about it personally? I don't care. I think it's a very interesting experiment.
The interesting thing I'm actually seeing here is that I relate the response to Mullet Arena actually quite similar to the response to the storm surge in Carolina, where you have a team that, to a certain extent, at the time that this is happening, is kind of on the verge of relocation, and then all of a sudden something happens that's completely out of the blue. With Carolina, obviously they started the storm surge and people started going to their games because it was an interesting new thing that you hadn't seen before. And Mullet Arena, I feel like, kind of has that in just the fact that they're playing in such a small arena that's called Mullet Arena, of all things. Excellent name. But it just, the response seems to be very, 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 very split the same way that it was before, because you had some people that were like, this is a really, really new thing, a really great thing. And just, it's great to see something new in the game of hockey that is unique to this particular squad. And then you had some of, particularly some of the older fan base who's like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. This is a hockey game. What the hell are they doing? And so I've kind of seen that reaction. It's kind of a parallel to me. So that's kind of how I view it, at least.
Yeah. Just to jump on what you said there, Carter. Obviously, all around the league, they're going to have opinions on whether they like the 4,000 seat arena or they hate the 4,000 seat arena. But I'm curious, how is the temperature in Arizona about that this year? Do the majority of the fans love it, or is it kind of like we're the Coyotes with the 4,000 seat arena? I'm just curious about that.
The fans, like the hardcore fan base, is absolutely loving it. I know a lot of us wanted to go to the Footprint Center, but Robert Sarver said no, and thankfully the NBA is kicking him out. So I don't know. I'll leave that open as a long shot in the future. And then where the Roadrunners used to play, the fairgrounds would need a lot more renovation. So it kind of like it worked out perfectly. A lot of the fans also recognize that if they want this building in Tempe, you get into bed with ASU. You do whatever you can to get a nice relationship with them, because essentially, I don't know if anyone from out of town really realizes this, ASU owns more land than I think Tempe itself.
Oh, wow. I didn't actually realize that.
It's massive. They are the biggest employer as well of Tempe. So if Tempe likes you, as long as there's not like fraud or like blatantly illegal stuff going on,
so there's a lot to this. There's a lot more to this. Wow. I had no idea about any of that stuff.
Again, just showing how great the Canadian media is at covering the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
But
They're dying for that Quebec team. That's what it is.
so am I, but like, stealing teams. I always
Quebec?
I like the
Huh?
Thrashers. The only reason I don't feel bad for Atlanta and losing their team is because they lost 2 teams. If you can't support 2 NHL teams, you shouldn't really get sympathy.
I'd argue that was more of an ownership issue. At its core.
Both times it was pretty bad, Carter, when you look at attendance and everything. But I agree, ownership always has something to contribute to a team's on-ice performance, without a doubt.
For sure.
But, I don't know. I've always just felt like the Coyotes have been a strong market that just needs a chance. So I'm just happy to see Mullet, early on having some success. That's all I care about. I'd love to be able to catch a game down there. I'm hoping to get my passport. Maybe I'll be able to go, but I don't know. If somehow Arizona can make it into the playoffs, I would
Applied
without
for
a
my
doubt, I'm
passport
going down there.
6 months ago.
I will be hitchhiking if I have to. I would love to see an NHL playoff game in a 5,000-seat arena. That would be insane. But nonetheless, though, we'll see if that ever happens. Will happen, hopefully. I don't know. Well, I don't want to jinx anything. Last thing I want to do is jinx your team. There we go, right? Hey, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they could do it. You never know. I don't know. I think the Coyotes are on a good standpoint. I don't know a lot about you guys' prospects right now, and I can't even remember the guy you just took, even though I know you had a good pick. So, kind of fill us in. Like,
Logan Cooley.
Thank you, Carter. I knew it was someone like that. I just want to take a shot in the dark. But,
Yep.
where do you see your team being in like 5 years? With the Jets, I think I can give my take on it. Jackson can, so can Carter and Zach, about all the different angles with our prospects and whatnot. But I know shit about the Coyotes prospects and their system. So I'd love to hear where's your hope lying right now in the future, and with what players?
So right now, first off, I want to congratulate you for being like one of 3 million Canadians that'll admit you don't know anything about the Coyotes prospects. So that's a good first start. Gotta get that first step in. No, but seriously, the prospects have borderline turned around in about a year's span. So after having to relinquish those draft picks for John Chaika being an idiot, and then the whole Mitchell Miller debacle of let's just throw away the highest draft pick we had, and I think it was 2020. They've done a really good job of kind of restocking the cupboards. Obviously, J.J. Moser, I forget which round he was taken in last year, but he was an overager. He's already carved in a top 4 spot in the defense, and he's pretty much, with his play, kind of looked the coach in the eye and said, "You're not putting me in as a third pairing defenseman. Like, he's someone you're going to want to build around." Matthias Michelli is someone that I really wanted them to be cautious with, and even though I thought he had a good camp, not the greatest camp, but it's also because I wasn't really focused on him. I was focused on a couple other players. Again, with his play, pretty much you're looking Coach Bear in the eye like, you're not sending me down. You could try, but you're not. And the fact that he has the most points, or he's tied for the most points, I don't know if Matty Beniers got another couple points in the last couple of days, but he's leading all NHL rookies in assists. That's going to be someone that minimum is in your top 9, but with how well he's played, and I was talking about it on my podcast with my co-host Richie, I would not mind if they found a way to move on from Nick Schmaltz and give Michelli his top 6 spot, because I just, nothing against Schmaltz. Good player when he's healthy, but just Michelli's been on a different level. Dylan Guenther, I think anyone knows about Dylan Guenther. He's kind of this pure goal scorer that's also been dishing the puck around pretty well, but he's also been mostly playing with Michelli, and even Hayton's been dishing the puck pretty well whenever they play together. But Gunner's, so he's going to be a 30-goal scorer, and he's going to be that pure goal scorer the Coyotes have always needed. I think the last 30-goal scorer we had was, I think, for Bada back in
Yeah, it was
2013. It was a while ago. Other prospects, Logan Cooley. I want to see where he projects at the NHL level, because obviously you see his skill. He had probably the highest, I agree with a lot of the analysts, probably had the highest offensive upside in this most recent draft. That being said, the size might be a bit of an issue to where he might get kicked off to the wing, but then again, you have him and Keller on opposite wings, or him and Guenther on opposite wings. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that here. Josh Doan, son of Coyotes and Jets legend Shane Doan.
absolutely.
He's developing pretty well at ASU right now, and then a couple of the other minor players are more like fringe guys, so I'm going to kind of leave them off. But these main guys that I've mainly talked about now, those are the ones that I see being a part of this team in some way, shape, or form. And as long as the core just keeps developing, in the next couple of years it'll solidify, and you'll really know what this team is going to look like when they get out of the rebuild. I would love to see them make the playoffs the last year in Mullet, because I think that would be funny. But they start making the playoffs, and in my opinion, in 5 years, they should be cup contenders. They're probably following right around the Blackhawks mold. But if you could get Fantilli, I know everyone wants Bedard. He's going to be phenomenal. I don't think the Coyotes ever get the first overall pick, so I'm laser focused on Fantilli. He's got the size. That can be another center for you. I've got Connor Geekie. I forgot to mention, I was going to chirp that he likes the Arizona weather more than Winnipeg. but
I don't really know if
just
that's a chirp. I think
Grass
I
is green. Like,
No, that's fair.
grass is green. Like, fuck, I like Arizona weather more. Doesn't mean
Like,
I
I
want to
like
live
the
there.
cold too, but I don't think I'm gonna complain about a nice
Oh,
desert
God.
temperatures.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much fun I had today digging my freaking car out of the snow. Like, can't tell you. Love doing that every day. Like, no. But I do find it interesting. Like, you talk about a bunch of like Schmaltz and wanting to move on from that. I feel like that kind of highlights one of the issues with the Coyotes is when players have gotten hot, it has been at inopportune times that suit the Coyotes. Like, to the point where you kind of need everybody to improve together or none at all. Otherwise, you're going to be in the middle of honest mediocrity, I'd say. And I feel like that was kind of the problem for the Coyotes for the last couple of years. Like, finally, you moved on. You moved on from Connor Garland. You moved on from Phil Kessel, Taylor Hall. Like, there were guys that put you to a certain extent, but never someone that actually, like, you didn't have enough guys going up at the right time, I guess, would be a thought.
it comes down to a lot of things, but I also agree with that because I think I'm going to pick on coaching because I don't like Tocchet as a coach. I think the team played better, especially offensively, despite his system.
Mhm.
But it was, like you said, a lot of inconsistency. Or Phil Kessel looked really good to start his first season here, tapered off immediately. But then when they are kind of going into the rebuild, oh, now he plays better. Then when they're fully in the rebuild, well, he can't score anymore, but he can dish the biscuit. But his trade value is down so much, so I guess you just have a guy helping you with a couple extra goals every few nights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Phil Kessel, I forgot about how bad he fell off with the Coyotes there. Honestly, at the end of that, like he was still good. Don't get me wrong. Like last year, he got 8 goals, the 44 assists, right? Like it's not bad for like at all by any means, but like 8 goals from Phil Kessel is just like wow. I didn't even realize it was that low. I can't believe that. But
We
Now
talked.
he's in Vegas and he scores. Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, we've been talking about guys that have left Arizona, like we were just talking about Phil Kessel, Taylor Hall. One guy that's seemingly been in trade talk for forever, at least the last 2 years, is Jacob Chychrun. Where does that kind of sit, like from a Coyotes fan perspective? Do you want him gone, or is this something that you think that they should try to resolve?
So the fan base and look, bless their heart, I love the Coyotes fans. A lot of the times they'll either miss small things or I think they choose to ignore some things. So at the very end of last season, Craig Morgan does an interview with Chychrun, and if you know how to read between the lines or PR speak, basically saying, "Get me the hell out of Arizona. Like I want to go compete." And it's like, hey, it's fun. It's you good contract. We can get some value for you. It's mutually beneficial. But I think what really kind of answers that question is his reception at opening night, how you had half the arena booing, half of them cheering, where it's like my opinion has been pretty consistent with if you can repatch that relationship, you can get him to buy into this rebuild, and you can get him to see himself as part of this team's future, and when they go on a cup run, don't care if they win or not, but there's going to be a run eventually. And if you can get that repaired, keep him. Do whatever you can. You build around him, Keller, those guys. But it seems like he's already made up his mind, so it's best move on from him. Get him in the lineup, and then he's scheduled to come back on the 21st. Get him in the lineup, get him scoring some points, make sure he looks good, and then cash out. Go get yourself a first, maybe a good prospect. I know the value's gone down, so I have no idea what the return's going to be. I would assume at least 2 first-round assets. But at this point, it's like, no, just
waiting a while on that. Yeah.
get him.
They want that high price. They want
They want
the
the
king's
moon.
ransom.
Mm-hmm.
So
They
and I
wanted
mean, you
4
can't really
first-round
blame them.
assets.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The Coyotes could benefit so much from getting all those kinds of assets, like you were saying. How you expect them to get going in around the next 5 years. Getting some good prospects or getting some good picks could be really, really key to that, and just kind of growing and developing with the rest of the prospects you guys have. So yeah, no, I can't blame Arizona for the strategy they're using with Chychrun and just holding out till they get the price that they want for him.
Well, it's the smart thing to do, and at least they're finally holding their assets. Arizona at times, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have bought high and sold low type thing with your players at times in the past, and it's good to see them actually holding on to it now because I remember when everyone was ripping Joe Sakic because he was holding on to his guys for way too long and all of this, but hey, you ended up moving Matt Duchene after all that time, and look at the return it turns. So, sometimes the long game is the smart way to go. And I think that it's the right decision there with Jakob Chychrun. I just got to point out, I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. I just wanted to see his contract go through a little bit. I completely forgot that you have two of my favorite former Jets on the Arizona Coyotes right now, and Andrew Ladd and Brian Little just wasting away on IR. I did not know Andrew Ladd was there. I forgot about that. I must have missed that trade.
Yeah, he failed the physicals or whatever.
When did he get traded there?
Last year,
First
he's not playing, so
he failed the physical this year. Yeah.
Oh, this year. Okay. Well, rest in peace, Andrew. That's an Andrew Ladd jersey right there, actually. That black one. Right there.
My first ever Jets jersey was an Andrew Ladd jersey.
So are a lot of people's.
First captain. What are you gonna do?
I was gonna say. Yeah, but
question. Did Nick Antropov ever play for Winnipeg, or was he gone?
Yes, he did. Nick Antropov has his first ever goal in Jets history, 2.0 history, is Nick Antropov.
There we go.
Against the Montreal Canadiens.
Zach played against his kid, yeah. And I remember he would. Andropov.
He's faster than his dad.
He's like, holy shit, this guy's tall.
His dad's got 2 fake hips.
Fair enough. I wanted to highlight one thing for the Coyotes, which I feel like has kind of been like it's becoming more publicized now. But has the goaltending situation been seemingly solved for the future in Arizona? Because Vejmelka is a goaltender who was kind of under the radar last year. Obviously, he got a shutout against the Jets in like a 40-save performance. I was there.
Zach,
if anyone's qualified to talk about that game,
hard-earned money to watch us put up
Louis
50
Eriksson
shots.
got a fucking assist that game.
Talk about
damn it!
Hey, don't disrespect the GOAT. Don't disrespect the GOAT.
Oh.
Canuck legend. Yeah. Canuck legend.
But obviously, the Coyotes have had some famous goaltending, with Mike Smith, Darcy Kemper, Antti Raanta. How do you stack up with the goaltending situation right now for the Coyotes?
I would say when they one name to keep an eye on just for the next couple of years is Anson Thornton, this kid that just kind of came out of nowhere in training camp last season, and now I think he's officially under contract with the team. But him and Vejmelka were kind of the stories of, okay, so Vejmelka's probably the goaltender right now. Maybe a guy like Prosotov, they're still developing, has looked a lot better this season, which is good. Or maybe even Anson Thornton, one of those two can come in, be a backup, or whatever goes on with Veggie. And the thing with Veggie is a lot of people have been saying something I definitely agree with. He's the perfect goaltender for a rebuild. He's not Darcy Kemper. He's not good enough to put the team on his back the entire season and drag us to the playoffs just to be embarrassed by the Stanley Cup champion, 3 years after the fact. But he's good enough to where he averages, I think, it's 30 some odd saves a night, and the save percentage only looks so bad because he'll have games where he just gets blown up because he's not the top 5 goalie in the league or anything, but I think as long as he can maintain that, he's at the very least going to be the 1B. I just don't know if he's who you want when you start going to the playoffs. He's 26 now. You're going to be hoping to make the playoffs in about 3 seasons, so that's probably your 1B. As far as the goaltending situation for your goalie of the future, all my money is on Prosy. I haven't given up on him yet, but also like to see guys like Anson Thornton and Rasmus Koronen in the system, who had a couple of good games with Tucson last season on loan. So I think it's starting to solidify, but we'll really know in a couple of years.
Yeah, because I see you have right now, I'm just going to double check to make sure it's still accurate. You have Connor Ingram as your backup, which I believe you guys grabbed off waivers?
Yep. Grabbed him off waivers. Fun fact, he was the goalie we blew up in the last game in Glendale to win that game against the Predators.
Jesus.
What was the name of that arena again?
We claimed him.
What was the name?
Gila River Arena.
Gila River? Is that what you said?
Gila.
Gila. Okay. Because
Gila.
I got a story. I got a gripe with that arena and that clause. I got a story, and I want to know.
I got a bone to pick.
I do got a bone to pick. All right. So, he's passed away now. But my great uncle, who was like my grandfather, he used to go and spend 6 months out of the year as a snowbird down in Arizona, and he would go constantly as a hockey fan to the Arizona Coyotes games. I remember he used to tell me the story where he'd get a hot dog, a beer, a bus ticket, and a ticket to the game, and it was $50 or something like that, dirt cheap. And he from his senior place, and he would go. Now, my own great uncle, God bless his soul, was a crazy man when it came to hockey. He loved to bring his fake cowbells everywhere with him. He brought them to all of his Lions games he went to. He brought him to every hockey game he ever went to, any arena, didn't matter where. He goes, walks into the arena. 2 security guys are on him like that. and they confiscate his bell and say, you're not allowed a cowbell in this arena. We have a no cowbell, no fan noise policy. And they took his cowbell. And
They wanted him to fit in.
And and he was wearing a Coyotes jersey too. And I've never, ever forgotten that story. And ever since then, I've had a beef with your franchise over that. So I want to know, right here, right now, is that a real thing? Or did they just single out my great uncle?
I've never heard of an anti-cowbell policy, but I do know that, I also worked at Heel River Arena on multiple occasions in multiple different departments doing multiple different jobs, so it's ran pretty poorly. The people that run it are idiots, so that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And the only advice I could have given him is go to Tucson because they love cowbell down there.
Well, he badmouthed your
Needs
franchise
more
for the rest of his days
cowbell.
after that incident, so that was your punishment.
He sold his home. No more snowbirds.
He actually did not long after that, actually.
Oh my god, then we
Back up.
won! No more snowbird!
Yeah, you eliminated one of the multi-million that come from multiple different
Oh
countries
my
and states.
I wish
They're
they
What's that like?
would
People-
fly
One thing-
like geese or something because the traffic gets bad over here and the snowbirds come
I
in.
bet it does, especially because they're all old and drive terribly. I'd love to know,
Yeah,
though, what's it like having like the snowbirds be such a large percentage of like your team's like attendance at times? Like I know, like I've always been curious about that because I know that a lot of the season ticket guys that go down there, like a lot of them are real fans, but I know there's a lot of people that are snowbirds that have season tickets. That have all these that just love the Coyotes, even though they're not a fan of the Coyotes just because it's hockey. Like, what's that been like, growing up with that as a part of your franchise?
Well, I didn't really know they were snowbirds when I was younger, but I did know that we have a lot of people that live here from New York, Chicago, Boston, Arizona as a whole as a transplant market. So I think it's probably why there's smaller, more dedicated, hardcore fandoms here, but it's not as big as other markets. It's weird, but then I kind of turn that into an own whenever people say move the team to Canada because I'm like, hey, you guys come here to support us. I'm like, you might as well just keep your actual or your second team here. But I kind of like it because, hey, if you're gonna come pay to keep my team here, I'm like, you're welcome. Just get the F off the roads because it's rush hour and I've got places to be.
Well,
Exactly. They have to use public transport. That's the rule, isn't it?
That's the rule. You can be here all you want. You got to use the bus or the rail.
Ah, jeez. Now, one thing completely kind of going in a different direction about this, but this is something that I was really, really wanting to ask and I was really curious about. One Jets player that we've had this season, and we've only seen a little bit of him, is Kyle
gonna bring this up.
Capobianco.
Yep.
And I really wanted to know from a Coyotes fan perspective, I know he spent quite a bit of time in Arizona. What should Jets fans expect from an asset like Kyle Capobianco?
So if you're asking me, who is a massive Capobianco fanboy, you're getting someone that at one point in his career projected to be another OEL. But like young OEL when he was also good defensively but could also pot goals. I think he probably overcooked in the AHL a little long, but if you ask most Coyotes fans that were watching him that last season here, where he got more ice time, you're probably going to get a guy that turns the puck over just too much. Now, I still think there's more than enough upside, especially offensively, and those things should be able to get worked out, especially when you're surrounded with better defensemen. Because let's be honest here, it was a bit of a shoestring operation last year. It makes perfect sense. But realistically, someone that's still pretty raw defensively, I don't know how that happened or what changed, but still can provide some pretty decent power play 2 quarterbacking upside.
So if we have him, like, for example, like the Jets, the way the Jets are using him is he's pretty much our 7th defenseman. And that's pretty much, and with the highest possibility for ice time mostly being like 3rd line left defense minutes. Would you say that's a proper sheltered role for him to succeed?
Well, especially because I haven't got to watch very much of the Jets this season. Just a few highlights.
You wouldn't have
Your
missed them.
guys'
You wouldn't have missed
one
them.
game.
He's only played one game. Yeah.
I was actually double checking that before. Yeah, he only got the 1 game played. If he's playing with a solid defensive defenseman and the system's a lot better than it was here, or at least personnel-wise, it's better. That's someone that you can use, and I think will even improve overall.
Dylan DeMello.
in that
Praise Dylan
Dylan
DeMello.
DeMello gets a friend.
Praise always be his name. It'd
Like-
be Dylan DeMello.
I feel like we all talked about this on an earlier episode after like his debut game. I know I talked about it on my own video on my channel, but like I genuinely thought Kyle Capobianco sliding into that spot out of the 3 defensemen we've seen rotating in there between him, Sandberg, and Logan Stanley had the best
should've played
game
last
and
night.
the best overall impact I felt like in one game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I noticed him a lot. I noticed exactly what you were saying. I'm really good at moving the puck. He didn't really get caught up with it. He always kept it moving. He flowed with the play well. I really liked what I saw from him, and I like. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know shit about him, and I was really upset when the Jets signed him in the offseason because I was like, this was our big free agent signing. You gotta remember that, man. This was like the only guy we had for
splurged.
2 weeks. This was our splurge. So I was a little upset because I was like, hey, this is a depth guy, and I didn't see much into him. But then I had a couple back and forths with you on Twitter. You know, we talked a little bit about him, and ever since then, I've actually been really intrigued with him because I feel like he's a lot more to offer at the NHL level than we've seen. Because, like you said, the Coyotes were a disaster last year, and even then on the blue line, and then even then he still put up 9 points. And you know, I thought in highlights at times I saw of him looked pretty composed out there. So I'm hoping he'll have a chance to grow with a stable defensive partner in DeMello. But I'd love to see more of him.
Yeah, get him in the lineup, but also I'm a little cross with him. I saw him at the Mullet Arena and he just walked right past me. I'm like, dude, I bought an Adidas Capobianco jersey. It's sitting right the hell over there.
Wait.
Legend.
Yeah.
How many
so-
jerseys do you have? I gotta know. How many Coyotes jerseys do you have? Do you have a rough
All right,
number?
Coyotes specifically,
Yes.
Yeah.
it's got to be somewhere around 40,
Jeez.
and total jerseys like 160. But by the end of the year, it's going to be well over 200 if I
With
can
the reverse retros,
buy a
right?
bunch of ASU jerseys because
Ooh.
they put out way too many good designs, and I'm like, damn, I can waste a fifth of my paycheck on this.
40 Coyotes, like just the Coyotes.
He just gets home. And his significant other's like, "You got another one?" And he's like, "But it's orange this time." Like,
I bet that's completely true too.
like,
Well,
oh,
it's like for-
Seeing your
it's like
content,
for
I can
me-
only imagine.
It's
It's
like for me, it's
different.
like I just want to have one of each. If I can have one of each, that's
Yeah.
great. And then this guy comes out and he's like, "Yeah, I have 40 of them." Like,
How many of them are
Well,
Shane
we're
Doan
on-
jerseys? Before Jack, I just want to ask one question before Jack.
Sorry, yeah, go for it.
How many are Shane
It's got to
Doan?
be at least 8. And I'll get more, damn it, I will. But I still gotta get a Michelli, gotta get a Gunther, gotta get a Josh Doan Coyotes. I have a Josh Doan ASU, but I get a
Josh
Josh Doan
Doan.
Coyotes.
Josh
Like,
Doan.
gotta keep it going.
There you
Oh
go.
my
Jackson.
You gonna need a Nathan Smith one?
Why not, dude? I
a
was shocked he
Brian
didn't make the
Little
team.
Coyotes jersey.
Oh God, I don't even want to see a Brian Little Coyotes jersey.
slap
So
you if
Brian
you get
Little, Pavel Datsyuk, Chris Pronger,
Marian Hossa.
Coyotes legend.
Bro, imagine explaining to somebody like a couple years ago. It's like, it's like this Coyotes team is trash. It's like, who's on the team? Oh, not much. Pavel Datsyuk, Marian Hossa, Brian Little, and you're just like, just the face is just like, how are you bad?
And how,
It's like, oh, they don't play,
but why?
and why
Well,
not?
well,
I'd love it if they just
well,
did
we're
that
on
one
the
night.
jerseys.
Just
Sorry,
decided
just-
we're gonna activate him. Hey, get over here, Pavel. It's
Get out
time
of
to
Russia,
play.
kid.
It's time for playoffs. You're coming in.
Jackson, your question?
Okay, yeah, no. While we're on jerseys, like Coyotes haven't been that great the last forever, but they've had really good jerseys. What's your favorite jersey out of the few? Because there's some bangers in there.
So my favorite for nostalgic reason. So this one right here is my first ever jersey I got. Donor signed it for me on my birthday in 2007. It's the one just after that without the striping at the bottom because that's what they're wearing when I grew up with them. But like I've really grown to appreciate the white Kachina, especially in Adidas. I've appreciated the Flying Fox overall jersey design. Would have been better if it said Phoenix Coyotes instead of had the Fox logo. And I hate word marks. Or the original green jersey. I've always loved that since I was a
Yes.
kid. It's
Yeah.
probably the Adidas white Kachina. Like, it made me appreciate white jerseys. Where before I'm like, no, they stain easily. These are all ugly. And I'm like, you know what? That's a beaut. I'll start buying more white jersey.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been trying to get a jersey of each team, and I just had to get this when they first brought this in as the third. Because I got this a while ago when it was the third. Hence why it's an Oliver Ekman Larson Coyotes jersey.
So I wanted to ask, because with the Winnipeg Jets going into this year, for example, we had a big question of coaching. And we can see sometimes how coaching can impact good teams, they can impact bad teams. And you have a former Team Canada World Junior Championship coach behind the bench. How has he been, and do you expect him to have a long stay in Arizona, or do you see him as a transitional coach to something different? Because it's really hard to gauge coaching when a team doesn't have the highest expectations.
I think he's done a phenomenal job. The biggest upsides with him going into it was you knew he's going to be working really well with younger players, and the offense almost immediately started to take off with him, where you're seeing guys like Keller hitting their potential, Schmaltz to that 7-point game. Krauser has turned into a 20-goal scorer, and he's on pace for like 22, 23 more this year. I think he's been phenomenal, especially with the defensive end, with getting these guys motivated. Like I think they would run through a brick wall for him. They shouldn't have had 25 wins last year. I thought, hey, that sounds about right, because you have a lot of guys that got thrown off their teams. The Vegas effect, like whenever you have guys that are given away for nothing, like Gostisbehere, that man is going to give us a first-round pick and maybe a prospect on top of that with how well he's played. So I thought, if the entire team does that, we'll be mediocre. Not, good, obviously, but no, not terrible. But I think he's gotten 110% effort out of all of his players. I would be very upset. I would probably be a very unhappy boy if they fired him or he was just a transitionary coach, because I think he has earned the right to see this through to the end unless the bottom falls out. But every little aspect of this, I think he's a team that should have been what they were the first 11 games last year. Almost no wins. Turned him into a 25-win team.
Oh, wow.
I know it screwed him out of the first overall pick, but I love Logan Cooley, so we'll let that slide.
Right.
So I think just he's the perfect coach for what we needed. I just hope it stays that way, because I can see it going places here.
Right. So even if the Coyotes, currently the Coyotes are in 25th place, they are 6-8-1 with 15 games played, which oddly puts them kind of in the middle of the Central, but that's kind of because of the Central just speaks for itself right now. But you're saying even if they finish as low as 28th, 29th, you don't see that being a detriment to the coaching job. You just see it more as just the lack of, so to speak, ceiling on the team itself. You still see it as a success story for the coach.
Oh, yeah, because you also look at the amount of role guys I have, the amount of essentially bottom six grinders. Like Bill Armstrong wants his team to be very hard to play against, and it's led to some extra wins to start the year, and you love seeing it. But it's also just Coach Andre Tournier was not given Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, a more prime OEL. He wasn't Connor Garland. He wasn't given those level of players. He was given, you have Schmaltz, Keller, and Chychrun Chychrun's broken half the time. Figure it out. And he's squeezed that rock until gold started coming out. So unless the bottom falls out, I see him as being the perfect coach for this team, especially, going into the future.
For sure. Then I don't know. Do you guys have any questions next? That answered my question perfectly.
No, he hit it right there, man, out of the park. I wanted to talk a little bit about because I know that he would have been on the team when you were a kid. I believe Tempo Numminen retired in 2008. Yep, 2008, even though he was a Buffalo at that time. But, the Winnipeg Jets are going to be having Tempo Numminen's number along with Teemu Selanne. They're going to be joining the others up there in the Hall of Fame in the MTS Arena, MTS Center, even though it's Canada Life now, but it's always MTS to me.
MTS Center.
But nonetheless,
they renamed the Iceplex too.
Yeah, but that's an Iceplex. Who cares? But yeah, I think it's funny because now that he not only did Tempo Numminen obviously play with the Jets and play with the Coyotes, but the Coyotes have his number retired as a Coyote, if I'm not mistaken, right? He along with him, Jeremy Roenick. I can't remember the other guys.
We also still have Steen, Howard-Chuck, and Hall.
I knew about those ones because they were retired. You guys got to keep the retired numbers during the move. And they were already up. Tempo Numminen is now going to be recognized with both the teams that he spent a lot of time with. What are your thoughts on Tempo Numminen? One of your best defensemen that you've ever had play for your franchise.
Unfortunately, I was too young to watch him play as a Coyote. I think he was wearing the Buffa Slug when I was getting into hockey. Well, side note, one of the best NHL jerseys ever made. I will stand by that. At least top 10. Love that freaking jersey. But Tempo, I think the value really comes in an interview I got to do with Shane Doan. I think it was around 2010. They had this program called like the Kidcaster, so I got to help like call a game for the second period and interview Shane Doan. And whenever he was talking about his biggest inspirations or kind of the players that influenced him the most, and he was developing kind of his leadership role, was Teppo and Walt. And I'm like, well, Walt's kind of the loud individual that, from what my dad said when he worked at America West Arena, if they were sucking, at the second intermission, doors are closed and you can hear that man screaming through the walls. And then Teppo, who's a lot more, I'm going to lead by example, lead on the ice, a little quieter, not quite OEL quiet, but just a little quieter in general. And seeing what that did for a guy like Donor, I don't even care that I didn't get to watch him play in his prime. I know his value, even just right there, is felt throughout the rest of the franchise. And the fact that the Jets get to honor him once more, I think they transitioned all those numbers except for Donor to being just Ring of Honor, so they were temporarily retired, and now they're not. But Donors is the first one that's officially retired. I don't know what the hell happened there, but
I swear,
hey, it's
teams
Arizona.
love to
Things
just
go
mess with their
weird.
fans with how it works with retired numbers. Every team confuses me. The Canucks
need
have the
more
Ring of Honor, yet they have
ceremonies.
retired things, yet they do player retirement ceremonies just for a retirement. Like, okay, are you honoring this guy, or is he just retiring, Kevin BX? You retired years ago and work on Sportsnet. What's going on now? But yeah, like, I just wanted thoughts on that, because Tempo Newman's one of my favorite players. I never got to watch him, obviously, with the Jets. I wasn't born, but I've watched the highlights. I grew up watching VHS tapes of the Jets when I was that era. And, I remember Tempo Newman and fondly on the Buffalo Sabres when I was a kid, just because my dad would always be like, hey, that guy played on the Jets, and that was my introduction to him. But I'm really, that's really interesting to hear how he had that effect on Shane Doan. He strikes me as that type of silent leader and a guy that leads by example. But really interesting story there. Thank you for sharing. But yeah, anyone have anywhere they want to steer this? Because I am just thinking about.
I've got one more. So in the draft, like this past draft in 2022, the Coyotes had 3 draft picks. They had obviously Logan Cooley, blanking on his name right now, Connor Geekie, and at pick number 29, one pick before Brad Lambert, a lot of people were confused about this pick. It was Maverick Lamoureux. And how do we feel about Maverick Lamoureux? Is this a good defensive? I don't know a ton about him, but a lot of people seem to be upset in the Arizona community that they didn't take Brad Lambert or Jaeger Furcus or a guy like that. How do you feel personally about that pick?
Well, I just want to first off start by saying I wanted Lambert, and just he's going to be good. I want to give him some proper respect there. But Lamoureux was a guy that I was a little confused too, but then I also look at it like they got Cooley, really good, offensive upside. They got Geeky once he works on his skating, and if he learns to utilize the size just a little bit more, especially at the NHL level, and bulks up a bit more, I think that's a power forward type, and that's you need that. You need a lot more of that. So with Lamoureux, I'm looking at it, and I think my co-host on my podcast, Richie, said it pretty well. They already got 2 forwards. Why not go for a big, burly, right-shot defenseman? And there's a lot of work still needs to be done in this game. I think he's currently injured. But they signed him to a contract in ELC ridiculously early, considering the fact that, at least from our perspective, it should take him 3 to 5 years to develop, be where you want him at, and the Coyotes are already that high on him. I know you can't teach size, you can't teach, the wings. I don't know why I can't say, but arm length.
Wingspan.
Wingspan. Thank you. I don't know why the hell I blanked on that. But also one small note, and Richie was saying that because of how hard he worked at the draft, he ended up being one of the highest or the highest rated performing player in the draft combine. And I'm like, you can't teach hustle like that. So I think with the size, with the fact that you're never going to not want extra right shot defensemen, the fact they're already that high on him to give him his ELC this early, I think that this probably could be one of those slam dunk, knock it out of the park type picks that people are going to be looking at, like, oh, why didn't X team get him or Y team? It also could end up being a bust. I'm not going to get arrogant about that. It's a possibility. But I think there's so much upside there. You already grabbed Geeky and Cooley. Why not take the risk? Because it's your 3rd pick in the first round.
I agree with that.
Well,
It's sound.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, especially with what you were saying about the coaching direction of the Coyotes and how one of the things that you said that you've noticed is how he's been able to really motivate his players and get the best out of them. So I think being able to see a player who's able to naturally do that himself, even without that, in an environment like the Combine, where the motivation you have is yourself and only yourself. So if you're able to do that, you have a coach that's able to motivate the guys around him. That's a recipe for success and a very good environment that I feel like players would develop very well in. So I think that I'm excited to see how that ends up. I'm very, very happy that we ended up getting Brad Lambert.
Me too.
But you know what? It by any means, it does not look like the Coyotes are getting they're not getting a bad player by any means out of that. And so I'll be excited to see where that goes. But one of the things, and I saw this just today, I'm not sure if you've seen this come out, but it's just kind of a theoretical. But yeah. So this is from Puck Empire on Instagram. The Coyotes will host an all-star game and draft if the Tempe Arena plan gets approved. What do you think about that as a Arizona Coyotes fan from Arizona?
Big if true, because here's my big problem with it. And look, I am so ecstatic. Like I'm happy about that being a promise. I want that to happen. I really think that if the Coyotes would have got their rescheduled all-star game like they were promised in Glendale, I think things would have worked out differently. You can't fix the fact that the West Valley is a bedroom community and it was a terrible commute, but I think it would have added a little more legitimacy to the building a little earlier on. So maybe you avoid one or two of the things that go bad, maybe you don't. But the fact that they were supposed to get an all-star game before, and because of I think it was the lockout season we lost, I even saw the logo on the puck for it and everything. It was actually a pretty cool little logo. And they kept saying, oh yeah, we'll give it to you later, And then when they got sold to
it was just
that
inevitable.
big investment group, we also never got it rescheduled. I know it would work out well, and I not that I'm going to say Bettman 100% is a liar, but there is a precedent for Arizona not getting all-star games. So probably more like a 90%, I believe it. But I do want the whole big if true. Let's get this arena proposal approved. Let's get shovels in the ground, and then we'll start worrying about all the bonus stuff.
That's fair enough. Although the thing I found interesting is that at first I was just kind of like, well, because I mean you have to realize that at first whenever I see the things coming out of Arizona, we've been hearing all this stuff up here in Canada about maybe this, maybe that for a long, long time now. So you kind of have to take everything. You have to take everything with a grain of salt, because it seems that somebody has this bright new idea that's been said about 1,000 times. That's not exactly new and bright. But I can't imagine that if this does happen, that this can't be really, really great for the environment with the Coyotes, in the sense of one of the things that's really key, and the BC Lions of the CFL have realized this year, is that by having some specialty events, some specialty games that's out of the ordinary, you can really, really attract some people that wouldn't have traditionally gone to a game to go out, see it, and then be intrigued and then come back for more. I mean, the BC Lions, they had One Republic concert right before their their home opener game of the season, and they've had some of the best attendance they've had in at least the past 5 years. And so when I see something in a decade, you know, they finally opened up the Upper Bowl there, and, you know, BC Place is not a small venue by any means. So when I see something like this, it kind of reminds me of that. And you know, it's one of those things where at the end of the day, whether it's in Arizona, whether it's in Houston, I want to see hockey thriving. If Arizona's going to have hockey thriving, so be it. That's awesome, and I'd love to see it. And I really hope that they're able to figure this out, because, you know, ideally you want teams to come from expansion, not because one didn't work out, and that is what it is. So yeah,
I agree with that. I appreciate that. You see, it's jerkbags like you that I get on these podcasts with that are like actual reasonable or well-meaning individuals, and it makes it harder to trash on Canada and Canadians in general. There's too many good faces in front of me.
But
Not hard.
It's pretty easy to trash on Americans too, though. So we
I'm not gonna lie, this is not the fight I thought was gonna start.
Is that what's happening right now? Zach, put aside. Is this Canada versus the U.S.? Put them up.
USA.
Wrap my stuff in the flag.
I got my Olympic gear in the closet, man.
I wanted to ask
do
one thing before we left, because I think we are kind of winding down at this point. Can you talk to us a little bit, because I feel like we hear so much about the state of the Coyotes and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how different it is now with the changing in ownership and general manager role, and also maybe illustrate how fucked you guys were based on the recent one? Like, let's be blunt here.
All right, so should I start with the bankruptcy, or are we going back a while?
Yes,
or?
Sure.
please. I'd love to hear a Coyotes fan take me through that,
thing.
please. I feel like if we're gonna end this off, we should just let you
Story time,
just
folks.
go. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're all gonna mute our mics now. It's just Matt's time. Please take us through the journey that is the Arizona
One second, let
Coyotes.
me get the mullet off. I'm gonna tell an actual story. Let's go ahead and be serious for a second. So, obviously they relocate here, and America West Arena is buzzing, but one of the problems was it wasn't built for hockey. So a lot of the sight lines were terrible, and I didn't know it until relatively recently. They were also selling a decent amount of tickets in the Upper Bowl for as low as $5. So there was a reason why, even though I saw full buildings and a lot of enthusiasm, that they weren't profitable yet. So they get the opportunity. I forget which owner it was. It's kind of irrelevant. Screw them. They get this land in Glendale, their whole brand new hockey arena. It's built for hockey. And considering the fact that I think the West Valley was kind of starting to grow at that point, it could have been good, but in the long term, I think most people would have realized they should have gone with the Scottsdale thing and pursued that more. But the problem was the Scottsdale deal ended up getting screwed over. So we go to Glendale. Then we get a lot of mediocrity, a lot of shoestring budgets, a lot of terrible seasons. What was it, Jerry Moyes? I forget what his name was. He owns Swift Trucking, and he's also a jackwagon, so throw that out there. He ends up filing for bankruptcy, I think in 2009. They fight to keep the team here. The NHL owns them, once again on an even tighter shoestring budget. And as Richie could attest, I actually forgot about this part, mainly because I was living, breathing Coyotes hockey. I didn't really care about the overall numbers. But there were games where there was, I think less than 5,000 people in the building after the bankruptcy because they didn't know if the team was even going to be there. So, of course, it's logical. Some people are like, okay, well, if the team's leaving, same thing with the Sting or the Roadrunners or any other team before them that left, it makes sense. It's sad, but it makes sense. Then throughout all of that drama, they make the playoffs, they rally, you see this building get excited and hyped, and then in this lockout-shortened season, instead of, and I think at that point they officially sold to LeBlanc or one of those ownership groups, or it might have been just before that, instead of re-signing Ray Whitney and going for one more damn run in that shortened season, they're like, nah, let's just get Martin Erad or whatever other mediocre players they're trying to get around that time. Sam Gagne. Nothing against Gagne, but he wasn't the answer.
Hey, you're stepping on toes right now, man.
They needed a number one seed, and they got a middle six forward. Let's be honest about that.
Sam Gagne's tenure with Arizona was legendary. What are you talking about?
Oh,
I'm pulling up the stat sheet.
We're pulling the numbers up here. Hold on a second.
Man, 15 goals, 26 assists for 41 points. Absolutely insane. Barn burner season.
Is that a one season?
One season.
Anyway, so we needed a number one center. You didn't get a number one center out of that. It's kind of the same thing with Derek Stepan. So I'm surprised we got that second round pick out of him. Thanks for Josh Dome, by the way. So they have these mediocre seasons that, to me, at least as a Coyotes fan, felt like a betrayal. Because I'm like, on this shoestring budget, you go all the way to the conference finals, you knew you were a couple pieces away, you could have made another run. And they just start cheaping out. Then they go, and I think LeBlanc takes over fully, or he's the majority owner. And they just start running this ship terribly. And once again, bringing back the shoestring budget. And it's like, you do know that you don't have Don Maloney anymore. You don't have, Dave Tippett. You don't have the people around you to actually make this work. You bring in Chaika, who's the ultimate snake oil salesman, who all of his moves, I hated him at the start for how he treated McCulloch and Vermette and guys like that, but his moves look so good in a bubble on the surface. And then they age like milk as soon as 6 months later. And then it gets even more and more of this just terrible management and ownership, and an owner that couldn't actually afford to pay the bills. Then we get into Morello coming in and essentially trying to clean house and right this ship. I don't know why he was so attached to John Chaika, but hey, I guess he was bought into the snake oil as well. Then the whole Glendale scenario happened. So one thing that I made sure to not mention on purpose until this point was they had a 15-year lease, and I think it was 2 years into it, Glendale, with very, very questionable reason and legality, pull out of the deal. They go to this year-on-year lease thing, and the Coyotes probably could have sued, and for whatever reason they chose not to, I'm assuming for goodwill, to keep the team here longer and try to make it work. So, then there's a lot of reports that were confirmed that Glendale wanted between a 15 and 20-year lease for the Coyotes to stay. They wanted them to stay. And what my personal theory is it wasn't a clerical error. The Coyotes were purposefully withholding some funds to be like, hey, we're not doing a 15-year lease. And then because they forgot, for whatever reason, you're messing with the tax man. Look, they got Al Capone. I don't know why you'd mess with the people that control the money, because then, you're going to get screwed over, and they did. So Glendale pulls out of the deal. Okay, you got 1 year to figure out what's going on. And at that point, the Coyotes are like, okay, we already have our mind on Tempe, on the East Valley. They renegotiate with ASU because LeBlanc wanted to go into bed with ASU at one point. He didn't have the money. There was this embarrassing press conference in Tempe around 2017 where no one from ASU showed up. It was just him being like, oh, yeah, we're trying to get this building built with ASU, and it was going to be like a 16,000-seat arena. It was an embarrassment. It was a joke. That guy was an idiot and had no money. So at this point, there was no room for error. There was no more room for maneuvering because COVID hit. A lot of Murillo's money is in casinos in Vegas. So obviously, I could honestly believe that the late payments in the 2020 bubble might have just been because the funds needed to go through. There was an error trying to get the funds to go through. So you didn't have that leeway. You didn't have 10 years of everything was good for this one hiccup. It's all good. So that hits. The Glendale story hits. Now you have no time. Okay, let's go play in a 5,000-seat arena. Again, it's turning out well, but for how long? You need the Tempe building. This doesn't work without the Tempe building getting approved in no circumstance. So now on this very tight timeline, very tight schedule, no room to try to negotiate properly. Okay, we're playing at ASU. Now we're going to build this annex, but the annex isn't going to be ready until December. So then now you saw the locker rooms. That was just the outline, by the way. It was pipe and drape for the outline. Then you bring in carpets and lockers and temporary walls. But I get it. It looked like a bit of a rush job because, well, that was the best they could come up with on this very small timeline they had, because when you have 15 years of being ran terribly, you don't have goodwill. You don't have a good track record. You're just trying to piece things together like a college student trying to figure out how he's going to afford his next cup of noodles. So then where we're at now, or despite, in my opinion, genuine effort to fix the situation, they're in deep. And it all comes down to this Tempe building. So it's been this massive mess for a long time, and I think we're at the point where bringing in Bill Armstrong to handle the hockey side, bringing back in Shane Doan after, I think it was LeBlanc who informed Chaika that they're just going to cut all ties and we don't need you around, which is another reason to not like Chaika, but LeBlanc as well. Don't not give him his credit, or whatever the owner's name was. I really don't care. But in the tight timeline of already being in the middle of a fire, I think they've done a good job trying to put out the fire, but the problem is they had no savings and they're trying to figure out what they're doing in a studio apartment on the rough side, on the rough side of town. And so, of course, everyone's going to look at it like you nitpick it because, well, it does make sense. If they would have had more time, or they wouldn't have, they would have essentially just tried to enter negotiations with Tempe a little earlier, or maybe try to renovate the Madhouse on McDowell. I know it would have been expensive, but that's around 10,000 seats. It looks a little better. It was just, you're putting out a fire, and I think they've done a good job getting that fire out. It just depends on what do they do from here. They're making all the right moves, saying all the right things, telling Tempe, no. They have backup plans. They're not going to say it because that would be terrible PR, but they've just said, no, we want to be in Tempe. We want to be in Tempe. They're doing everything right at this point. But from an outside perspective, I can kind of understand it looks like way too little too late, because it kind of is to an extent, and yet they're still showing resiliency to rebuild this franchise to where it should be. I think once that Tempe arena goes through and we get that arena built, this is probably going to be one of the craziest documentaries or podcast series you're going to see in sports history, because it's been bad behind the scenes for a long time in a lot of really stupid ways. And hopefully I told that coherently.
You really
and
did.
it wasn't just ranting.
That was awesome.
And
I was just
now,
sucked into that, man.
I was zoned in, but I have one more question about the Tempe situation. So, to my understanding, what has happened is the city has decided that the residents of Tempe are going to be making the decision on that. Now, how do you think that will go? Not from a perspective of what Coyotes fans would want, but what would the city, the residents of Tempe, what do you think the residents of Tempe, the general public, how they would vote when it comes to a possible arena for the Coyotes?
As of right now, they're pulling at about 60%, and I think especially, I think it's one of the labor boards that they have on their side. There's also a lot of potential jobs they want to bring to. The building is currently
that's always one of the promises with a new building. Yeah.
So it's like it's currently a landfill. So I know what they do. They did ask it. It was all up front. They want help with remediation. I think they're putting forth like 30 or 40 million in the proposal, and then they also want help with some like underground infrastructure. They want to help with some of those costs, but everything else is privately funded, or they have an additional like tax on everything inside of this ecosystem that will help maintain it and move it forward. As long as they keep the messaging honest up front. I don't know what changes may or may not have happened throughout the last couple months of negotiations, because things have to have changed. But the Tempe City Council sees the value in it. You're getting the labor board that's seen the value in it. The citizens are seeing some value in it. I think as long as they're transparent, they're honest, and all the numbers line up the way that they should.
Don't fall apart.
It looks like it.
Don't trip and fall.
Just don't trip and fall. I think they'll see the value in it, because right now it's literally a landfill, and you can turn that into a nice arena with jobs, hotels, and I think some apartments and whatnot. So I think it will pass, but it might be a little close.
Yeah, I mean, the Bomber Stadium for a while was really, really close to a landfill, so we have a little bit of knowledge in that. But does it just have to be 50%? I know for some proposals as big as that, they sometimes require something higher. I have no idea how that works. So
to my knowledge, it's a general, so I think it's just 51% or 50.1 or whatever.
Just majority, straight majority.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was majority, but there are still 2 more hearings. I think there's a zoning hearing on the 19th, and on the 29th, the Tempe Council votes. Now, if that vote is no, then they have to redo whatever, but that should pass. And I think another big thing a lot of people aren't thinking about, another thing my co-host brought up, Richie, where the city of Phoenix, Sky Harbor Airport, I think it's also the Goldwater Group, is another, that are looking out for the citizens' best interests, and I also in concept agree with that, because you don't want to screw over a city. We've seen way too many arenas that screw over cities. I get it. If it goes to public vote and the public says yes, it makes lawsuits hold way less ground, which means any potential delays, because Sky Harbor wants to file a lawsuit, the city of Phoenix wants to file a lawsuit, it will probably take less time. It will likely be thrown away. So I think it's also a really good strategic, just to be
the last thing you guys need is delays.
Decision. Yep.
The last thing you guys need is delay, because
but nobody wants the 4th year of Mullet. Let's be honest here. I love Mullet. I think
it's a means to
novelty is going to wear off in a year. But whenever the Tempe Arena is approved, so that first year's up, you're looking forward to Tempe. You're not focused on Mullet being okay. At least they're here for one more year or whatever. So it's like, okay, as long as Tempe goes through, this will be fine. But nobody wants that 4th year. I can guarantee ASU doesn't. That's my independent statement. That has not been told to me by ASU themselves. I work at the building. I just want to have a very small disclosure there. But it's not ideal for that 4th year. Everybody wants it done. They just want the 3 years and go right to the new building. But it could take that 4th year, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just kind of curious to see, because like I said, all we got up here in Canada is that there's a proposal and it's going to the residents, and I have no idea what the polling is or anything down there, what the public opinion is about it. So I figured I'd ask someone who is more of a part of it than
it's an electoral college, Carter. You don't got a chance.
So yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I feel like that's a really good place to end it on. Thank you for giving such a really good, well-rounded explanation of the timeline that has surrounded the Coyotes, because I know, like, I knew a lot of what you were saying. I just didn't know exactly in the order that it kind of all happened, you know, and what it is, because I just, you know, I'll be on Twitter and I'll be like, boom, Coyotes news, and then a couple weeks later, another bit of Coyotes news, and I can never remember the way it happened. So thank you for that, and thank you just for all the knowledge that you were able to give today on a franchise that we don't know.
I've learned
about.
so
It's
much
really
in an hour.
Really opened myself up to the Coyotes, and really, I've got to say, I was always on their side, but I think even more now so than ever, I want to see the Coyotes succeed.
TSN, get your shit together. Holy crap. There's so much you're not
Hire
knowing.
me. I'll be your Coyotes reporter at TSN. You can pay me minimum wage. I don't care.
Nah.
But what's your minimum wage? Because we might be on 2 different wavelengths there, buddy.
Yeah, your minimum wage might be a big boost for you, man.
My
Exactly.
minimum wage is like $12.25 or something in Arizona. But
Oh,
no,
so
you
it's actually not that
Mullet.
different.
Yeah, but like conversion.
Yeah.
I was expecting you to say like $6.50 or something like that. I know, man.
Oh, no, sir. No, sir.
I know there's some
What is
states.
there in the Great Depression? $6.50
Dude, there are
an
some
hour?
states. There are some
So-
states.
There are
Slow
some
down,
states that have that, Zach.
It was like $7.50 in a few of the Midwestern states, but you also got to remember a lot of those states they call them flyover states. The economies are smaller.
Oh, Ohio.
They really
never mind. Okay.
Their economy probably would be destroyed if it just jumped up to 12 or something. Like small increments is kind of what.
Turns
those
out we're gonna pay you
markets
like
handle.
humans now.
We can't just pay you like the roaches.
God.
They want just free food.
Even though that's what you are. Walmart. But you know what? Seriously though, thank you, Matt, for coming on, spending some time talking hockey with a bunch of us stupid Canadians up here, and educating us on a team we don't know that much about. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already done so, go and check out all of Matt's links down in the description below. Subscribe to the Arizona Sports Guy. I said it that way just because I know you don't like it.
You jackass.
But thank you again for coming on. I think I can speak for everybody.
You
This
and
was a
your
great
40
time.
jerseys.
We really, really appreciate you guys checking out this episode as always. So, you know, this is the first episode on the channel. You know, nothing's really going to be changing except where you find it. So we hope you enjoyed that. I hope you get comfortable with all the new content that will be coming your way from all of us here at the Prairie Puck Podcast. So thank you so much for watching. As always, what?
One more thing.
Oh my God, you've said one more thing like 10 times. Last 20 minutes.
On the new channel, we will have a playlist with all the previous
That
episodes.
doesn't matter. You can find it yourself. Carter's just talking, rambling. Go check out I don't even care anymore. You ruined my goddamn flow. Why? God, man. You know what? You know, Jackson, I think you
You know what? Just go away. Go Thrashers. Whatever.
What's up?
Pick a thing.
You know what? Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Go Coyotes. They're just the Jets.